The views and opinions expressed on America's Workforce Union podcast and its digital media channels are solely those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views and opinions of the producers or sponsors.
Welcome to the America's Workforce Radio Podcast, the flagship production of the American Workers Radio and Podcast Network, where organized labor and its never-ending fight to protect the rights of the American worker come first. Now, presented by LIUNA, Laborers International Union of North America. Here's your host, Ed Flash Ferens.
A union win for rideshare drivers in Massachusetts. How about this? Pope Leo speaking out on artificial intelligence. And today on the show, the United Steelworkers. Welcome to the Friday, May 29th edition of America's Workforce, where we're available on at least 5 platforms, including YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora. John Lepley will be our featured guest on the show today. He comes to us from one of our great sponsors, the United Steelworkers, USW.org. John serves as Director of Education and Membership, and he has worked for the union since 2010. He comes from a military family with deep roots in southwestern Pennsylvania. And today, we're going to talk about mental health. Boy, it's so important. And this is an issue that we have focused on this show many, many times. In fact, on Memorial Day, in case you missed it, I just love that guy, Mike Hazard from Veterans in Piping at the United Association. He talked about the importance of workers' mental health, and John is going to pick up on that today. John says mental health is a central component in everyone's life, and that doesn't change when a person goes to or leaves their workplace. The boundaries between work and our personal lives are very porous these days, and unions play a positive role in creating a workplace that helps workers and employers thrive. And we're going to talk about that, what the steelworkers primarily are doing to make sure that their workers are safe when it comes to mental health. Big issue, especially since the pandemic. A lot of people talking about this, and a lot of unions are doing something about it. And the steelworkers is in that camp. So John Lepley will be our featured guest on the show today. Now, a brief look into the world of labor. This segment brought to you by Boyd Watterson Asset Management. You can find more at boydwatterson.com. Good news out of Massachusetts, where rideshare drivers made history after the App Drivers Union received state certification to represent about 70,000 rideshare drivers in the state. The first such union in the country. The union, affiliated with SEIU and the machinists, qualified for certification by submitting nearly 23,000 driver signatures under a state ballot initiative going back to 2024 that created a sectoral bargaining process for rideshare drivers. So congratulations to those who worked so hard on this initiative in the state of Massachusetts. Pope Leo has issued a sweeping papal encyclical on artificial intelligence. That's right. Calling on governments to regulate AI companies, protect and retrain workers whose jobs are threatened, and to ensure that humans remain responsible for consequential decisions. This document is titled Magnifica Humanitas, or Magnificent Humanity. And it was signed on the 135th anniversary of Rerum Novarum, which goes back to 1891, an encyclical that became a cornerstone of Catholic workers' rights doctrine during the Industrial Revolution. And this is what the Pope wrote. The pursuit of greater profits cannot justify choices that systematically sacrifice jobs. He warned that a society that guarantees employment to only a fraction of the population, despite having a high level of technical development, risks exposing many to forced inactivity. That's a quote from the Pope. the Pope presented the encyclical with Christopher Olah, who's co-founder of Anthropic, in a symbolic gesture of dialogue between the church, the Catholic Church, and the technology industry. Olah acknowledged that AI companies do need moral guidance to avoid being swayed by incentives that he said can sometimes conflict with doing the right thing. Really? Interesting. Gotta love this Pope. He cares about workers, no doubt about that. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk a lot about mental health with the Director of Education and Membership at the United Steelworkers. Once again, you're listening to America's Workforce.
You're listening to America's Workforce with Ed Flash Ferens.
It takes LIUNA to keep America running. Over 70,000 public employees are part of LIUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, delivering critical services such as healthcare and emergency response, as well as maintaining roads and sanitation systems. Even the National Postal Mail Handlers Union, representing over 47,000 U.S. postal workers, is affiliated with LIUNA. Find out what it takes for LIUNA to keep America running at liuna.org. That's liuna.org.
There is unity and strength for workers.
We are the USW.
We are the USW.
The United Steelworkers.
The largest industrial union in North America.
We represent 850,000 members in the U.S., Canada, and the Caribbean.
We work in metals,
Rubber,
chemicals,
paper,
oil refining,
atomic energy, and the service sector.
we are steelworkers, standing strong and fighting for what's right.
America's Workforce is presented by the Laborers International Union of North America. Feel the power right now at liuna.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the United Steelworkers. You can find more at USW.org. This segment of the show is brought to you by the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees Division of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. For more information, please visit bmwe.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Communication Workers of America. You can find more at cwa-union.org.
America's Workforce appreciates our sponsor, the Columbus Central Ohio Building and Construction Trades Council, who represents more than 18,000 workers from 19 affiliated local unions and district councils.
Now, back to America's Workforce. Here's Ed Flash Ferens.
And remember, you can check us out on Facebook or follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. That would be AWF Union Podcast, AWF Union Podcast. Everything is archived there. Let's go to our featured guest today, one of the longtime sponsors of America's Workforce. And I've said this on the show. We always get new listeners. So those of you who are just tuning in or checking out, tuning is kind of an old term. You know, podcasts you can access anytime, but I come from broadcasting. Long time ago, different age in America, no doubt about that. I had the opportunity to work with my dad with the steelworkers back in the early 70s. And I'll tell you, I remember saying to my dad, I don't know how the heck you did this for 40 plus years. I have to go into broadcasting. A lot of people laughed at me about that scenario, but I eventually did. I had a fun ride. And here I am today hosting America's Workforce Podcast. And one of the first sponsors that came on board, United Steelworkers, USW.org, had a great interview with Roxanne Brown, the new general president of Steelworkers. That was back in March when we were saluting Women's History Month here on the show. Again, just go to AWF Podcast for that. But today we're going to talk about safety, especially when it comes to your mental health. We talk a lot about physical safety. Well, guess what? Mental health is just as important. And joining us as our featured guest is John Lepley. John is Director of Education and Membership Development at the United Steelworkers. He's worked for the union since 2010, comes from a military family. John, welcome back to the show. Thanks for joining us today. And let's just get right into it here. And I tell you, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. You can't talk enough about this subject. You really can't. And we've done a whole lot, especially with the building trades. You know that in the trades, the suicide rate is ridiculously high, 3, 4, in some cases, 5 times higher. You're dealing with a tough job. You get injured. You get on prescription medication, prescriptions run out. Well, you try to supplement that with alcohol, maybe other drugs, things, turn for the worse. It's sad, but you got to salute the unions that are doing everything possible to change the dynamics here. And, the steelworkers are one of those great unions. So talk to me about what you're doing over the steelworkers. Go ahead, my brother.
All right. Well, hey, thanks again for having us on here today and for highlighting this topic. And you started out saying May is Mental Health Month. And May is also something else really special, especially to our union, which is last week, I think May 22nd to be precise, the Steelworkers celebrated its 84th birthday. We were born in Cleveland, Ohio on May 22nd, 1942. And if you go back to that period, the late 1930s when our predecessor was organized and then the Steelworkers in 42, we had this set of founding principles. And one of those is that, I'm paraphrasing here, to improve the lives of workers through joint agreement or collective bargaining. Collective bargaining is a lot more than just wage increases, which are very important, and negotiating those benefits. But it is really about the total worker, their entire well-being on the job and also off the job. On one hand, mental health, I think, it's a new topic, or we're talking about it in a new way the past few years. But this has been a major part of our mission to humanize the workplaces for our members and their families for 84 years now.
When you say you're talking about it in a new way, explain that new way. And I know part of the answer here is the stigma of mental health. And you know how you're weak. Can't you get over it? What's wrong with you? Is that part of it? Is it cutting through that?
It is. And I think, there's a lot of stuff at work here. And anecdotally, what I see is especially COVID was a major factor. That period where I think it was tough in so many ways for so many people. Like, everybody experienced it differently. I think that stress of that experience opened up possibilities to have these tough discussions. A key takeaway from the classes we do with steelworker members, local union leaders is it's okay to not be okay. It's tough to talk about. I'm a child of the 1980s, and I remember you get hurt, you don't cry, you walk it off, you get back up and you keep doing it. And those things become part of who you are and how you see the world, and it's not always healthy. So we are now doing a lot of classes with local union leaders on what goes into a person's mental health. It doesn't end when you go into the workplace, and it certainly continues when you go from work to home, right? The boundaries, I think one of the issues we talk about a lot is the boundaries between work and home are getting thinner and thinner. People are working longer hours. Something that we notice is people have really long commutes to and from work, and just the stress. If you're stuck in traffic or you're driving for an hour on the interstate, that adds up a lot. We might not always verbalize it, but creating spaces where it's okay to talk about that without that stigma is a huge step.
John, talk to me about these classes that you're working with across America in various unions. Are these mandatory things you're saying, or you're just offering them, saying, hey, you might want to take part in this because of the world we live in today? How do they work?
These are totally voluntary. You go to a conference and it's like a buffet. So this is a class on the menu that you can elect to go to. And what's amazing, and this is going back to a question you asked a while ago, is we're seeing people in these classes that I think 10, 15 years ago would not have felt comfortable going into these classes. And it's okay. I think the beautiful thing about a union space like this is we bring people together. This is probably the only place in life where people like this are together from different regions of the United States, Canada too, oftentimes. They might have different perspectives on a whole lot of things, but they believe in the union, and they believe that part of being a union member's responsibility is to care for each other. So we start with their experience. What are the things that cause you stress, cause you discomfort? Sometimes people are comfortable sharing. Other times, we see folks who aren't, because you don't know their story and it's tough. And we respect that. Just being there, listening, you get something out of it. And then we talk about, the things that go into a healthy human being, talking about like how this has been part of who we are for 84 years. The core values of any union, especially the steelworkers, is solidarity.
Yep.
That we are connected to each other. And the science, the studies show that a healthy human being is someone who has like 12 to 14 people in their life. That can be family at home, but also we have our work family. I think there's probably a lot of people out there who spend as much time with their coworkers as the people they are married to or their parents of. We got to look out for each other, recognize, hey, brother, hey, sister, are you doing okay? Anything we can help you with, or you think you might need to go see someone for help? Sometimes just checking in like that can make a huge difference. You never know what someone's going through.
John, if you don't mind, I'd like to get into what you're actually doing to help that worker that's suffering mentally. We hear of these member assistance programs, and also you mentioned these meetings that you're having. Do you have any professionals in those meetings that can guide people along?
Yeah. So a couple things. Like, first off, in these classes, really, I think the major objective is just making people comfortable to talk about this. Again, the taboo, the stigma around that. So we're just creating a space where it's okay to stay and hear Vegas rules. Sometimes we have people draw a picture of things that stress you out. And then we like to give them some practical tools to take back. And I want to be clear here. We're not training people to be therapists on the shop floor. We don't want people practicing without a license. But really, what are warning signs that we can look out for to see is someone going through a tough time? What are the visible signs? Are they withdrawing from contact with other people? This is often overlaps with other issues, substance abuse, like you talked about. Maybe someone is experiencing domestic violence. Do they have bruising on their bodies? Right? These are tough, uncomfortable conversations to have. And it requires a lot of care in a relationship. So we're teaching members, especially our local union leaders and our stewards, here are some 10 tips to look out for. And really it comes down to, can we get this person who might be struggling to go see someone for help, whether it be a medical provider. Some communities, it's their faith leader that they go to, a priest, a minister, so on.
Mm-hmm.
So we're doing these classes in person, also virtually. We've done a number of online classes on Zoom where we're having these discussions. We're listening to people talk. We're learning from these as much as the members are learning from us. And we have had a lot of professional input. We found a psychology professor at the City University of New York who actually wrote his doctoral dissertation on the relationship between unions and mental health. And this is a no-brainer here, but he says there is a strong relationship or correlation between having a union at your workplace and, rates of workplace mental health.
Well, that's good to hear. Maybe we could get that individual on the show to talk some more about this issue.
I'd be happy to give you his contact information.
Okay, good. Yeah, we can do that down the road. Talk to me a little bit more about the participation rate. I don't know how long you've been doing these meetings, and some of them online, as you referenced.
The idea for this came actually when we heard a representative from the Carpenters Union talk about a program they have. This was 3 or 4 years ago. We found this professor at the City College in New York. We reached out to him. Me and a colleague, we said, hey, we're doing this class with, I think around 50 steelworkers from all over the United States and Canada. And I can't remember the exact makeup of the class, but it was, say, 75% male, 25% female. I'll be honest, I was nervous how this was going to go over. Was it going to crash? Would it go well? The psychology professor, his name's Waleed Sami. He got up there and he had a really gentle way. And he just talked with people about, well, what are the things that stress you out, whether at work or just areas in life. Maybe sometimes these are like, chemical or biological processes in our bodies that we can't control. And he talked about, what is it like at work and dealing with people and problems and just the challenges of everyday life. A lot of it is also teaching people to listen. Anyway, so I was really nervous how this class was going to go over, and I have never seen a class like this where the image that I have in my mind is like of this balloon that's ready to burst. Mm-hmm. Right? Like you could feel like people were stressed out, even though they were in a great place like this, right? They're problem solvers on the job. They're dealing with a lot. And it was like this realization of it's okay to talk about these things. There's no shame in it. Everyone hurts. People are hurting all over for a million reasons, right? It's a tough world out there right now. All you got to do is turn on the news or the radio, and it's nothing but bad news. But we can have each other's back. We can listen. We can be there to help a sister or brother out in need, give you some encouragement to maybe seek some professional help or someone to talk with you more.
John Lepley is our featured guest today. Is the Director of Education and Membership Development at the United Steelworkers. The website you want to go to, the national website, is USW.org. Real simple, USW.org. One of the many proud sponsors of America's Workforce. We're talking about mental health, your mental health. John, when we come back, I want to talk, you represent a lot. I think it was over 50,000 in the healthcare industry.
Yeah.
And you mentioned violence, domestic violence, obviously in a relationship, but those in the healthcare industry, they're getting hurt. They're getting hurt big time. I want to talk about what you're doing to help them out and more. There's a lot more, a couple more questions here I have for you, and I really appreciate your time because you're doing a great job at the Steelworkers. John Lepley, our featured guest today. We'll be back in a few minutes right here on America's Workforce. Don't go away.
This is America's Workforce. More shows available at awfradio.com.
It takes LIUNA to build North America's infrastructure. From roads and bridges to schools and skyscrapers, the men and women of LIUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, build the projects we depend on. From constructing the Freedom Tower on the site of the former World Trade Center to untangling Washington, D.C.'s congested interstate, LIUNA members do the work that matters. Find out what it takes to be built by LIUNA at liuna.org. That's liuna.org.
America's Workforce Radio is sponsored in part by the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, District Council 6, representing painters, glazers, drywall finishers, and sign and display industry workers. They remind you that belonging to a union is your right as an American.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Ironworkers. You can find more at ironworkers.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers. You can find more at ifpte.org.
America's Workforce is sponsored in part by Boyd Watterson Asset Management, LLC. Find out more about our investment solutions tailored to meet the needs of Taft-Hartley funds at boydwatterson.com.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, where you can find more at teamster.org. The Ironworkers Great Lakes District Council, consisting of 8 ironworker local unions in West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Michigan. We build the skylines and bridges along the Great Lakes. With more work than ever before, the Great Lakes District Council is actively searching out the next great ironworker. Whether it's building the next Intel plant or constructing a bridge to safely connect our great cities along the lake. So join the Ironworkers Great Lakes District Council today. Find out how and learn more about the council by visiting iwdistrictcouncil.com. Founded in 1887, the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees Division of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters represents the employees responsible for tirelessly constructing and maintaining the national rail system in America. For more than a century, the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees has proven they have what it takes to protect its members and meet the ever-changing challenges of the rail industry. Today, the BMWED continues to fight for job security, fair wages, better benefits, and safer, more modern work environments. For more information, please visit bmwe.org.
Now, back to Ed Flash Ferens with America's Workforce.
And remember, you can check us out on at least 5 platforms. That includes YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora. And when you get an opportunity, here's what you do. Just sign up and receive our shows on a regular basis and give us a rating. We always appreciate those 5-star ratings, so please keep them coming. As you know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we're talking about mental health and awareness with John Lepley, who is the Director of Education and Membership Development at the United Steelworkers. USW.org, national website. Mental health is a central component in everyone's life, and ever since the pandemic, there's been more attention to it, and that's certainly welcome, no doubt about that. It's okay not to be okay. That's the message from anybody that's involved in this field, including John Lepley. John, a couple of things. I want to talk about collective bargaining agreements. The unions work really, really hard to make sure that their members are protected, number one, with wages, with benefits. And when the benefits come, obviously you got your physical health and your mental health. Employers generally have been more cognizant of the issues dealing with people. I mean, you want to make sure that the people that are working for you have their mental health in check, just like you want safety on the job. What would you say that relationship is, especially when you're Now, I know you're not negotiating those contracts, but I know, with your experience at the Steelworkers, you got to have some knowledge to that.
Yeah, I think it comes down to is that workplace safety and health is more than just what we would see as like the traditional hazards, right? Avoiding slips, trips, falls, or exposure to chemicals or processes that can hurt people. It's about your well-being on and off the job. And this intersects with so many aspects of work and life. This means scheduling your hours of work. A major issue since the pandemic has been staffing. A number of workers make the wisecrack that I feel like I live at work and I vacation at home. And so not only are people just physically and mentally drained, but they're demoralized because they never see their families or their spouses or their loved ones, right? Like you need that mental break. Again, it's like mental health is integral to all aspects of the workplace. And so we take that on in a lot of ways with pushing employers to hire more people, their workforce is to the bone, that they are adjusting schedules so people have time to be with their families and their loved ones, that people have a voice in how that's done. You talked before the break about the healthcare industry, especially in there, staffing is such a critical issue. I don't know the numbers for 2026 so far or 2025, but that is one of the most hazardous industries in America. Right. And just think about the irony of that healthcare, hospitals, clinics, nursing homes are dangerous places to work because, in a lot of cases, workers are isolated while they're doing their jobs. They might be around people who are in just some kind of distress and they're not mentally well. They might be on a substance of some kind. They might be in a violent position, right? You're dealing with a lot of the problems of society in these healthcare institutions, and a nurse working by themselves is in a really vulnerable state, in a vulnerable position. Mental health of nursing, especially in the age of COVID, has just been so hard hit.
Yeah, and they take it out on the employees. And I have to ask you, since you've been starting these meetings that you talked about to make sure that everybody, gets what they deserve when it comes to taking care of their mental health. Are you seeing the people that you're representing in healthcare, the nurses, and are they coming to those meetings and saying, hey, I need some help on this?
Yeah, we're especially hearing from people in healthcare. They are just worked so thin, right? Even getting time to come to these union meetings is often takes a miracle. And what's great about, our steelworkers union is you have people who work in healthcare in the same class with someone who might work in a steel mill or an oil refinery or some kind of, municipal government office. Even if they work in incredibly different industries and workplaces, they're still dealing with a lot of the same issues, right? And sometimes just having someone next to you, maybe, you begin a class as complete strangers, and by the end of the week, I've seen people, it's like they're leaving their new best friend, right? And they stay in touch. And that's the beauty of the union, is that in those toughest moments is we have each other.
Yeah. John, I have to ask you, with Roxanne Brown, now your general president, she took over at the beginning of March. I'm sure she's embraced this issue more so than anybody, and the fact that you got to be sensitive to this kind of thing, and you obviously put the resources where they should be. Anything has changed since she's taken over? It's kind of early right now, but I have to ask you that.
President Brown is fantastic, and I got to tell you, that first class where we brought in the psychology professor, to do the mental health class, I think then Vice President Brown popped in at one point during that week in a sidebar conversation. A member shared with her it was a transformative class for this member. And he was just kind of over the moon talking about, like, this is an amazing skill. It's like a whole new language I've learned. He later shared with her at another point, like, he went home and instead of the usual, what's up, how you doing? He started asking people, how are you feeling? And it's, different when you get a question posed like that, right? That's not a greeting that flows off. And sometimes it puts people, it makes you think, how am I feeling? I can remember being at an international executive board meeting about 1.5 2 years ago, and this discussion came up, and President Brown highlighted that class. So she has been a wonderful advocate of this issue, and I look forward to that continuing for a long time under her leadership.
I just love that woman. She is so dynamic. She is so passionate on every level. She's passionate. She's sensitive. As I often say on the show, she checks all the boxes, and you got a good leader there.
Her energy, the inspiration that she brings, she is sharp as a tack. It's just amazing to listen to her. Her command of so many subjects is incredible.
Well, John, I think I'm going to leave it on that note. I think we covered it all. If there's anything else you want to say as we kind of wrap up this podcast here, I really appreciate your time and your dedication. This is an issue that and I promise you, we will continue to address this issue here on America's Workforce.
I'm so glad you're lifting this up. And mental health, this isn't just about mental health, the work we do, but it's about uplifting all workers, the least out there among us. They need this so much more, especially in this day and age. Let's go build the union, and thank you for what you do.
Just remember, it's okay not to be okay. There's plenty of resources out there. Take advantage of them. USW.org, national website. John Lepley, our featured guest, Director of Education and Membership Development. You take care, stay safe. I'm sure we'll be talking down the road. Okay, brother?
All right, sounds great.
And that'll be it for another edition of America's Workforce. Coming up on Monday, we check in with the Chicago Federation of Musicians. Until then, all of you have a safe and wonderful weekend.
That concludes another episode of the America's Workforce Radio Podcast. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a show. America's Workforce is a production of Labor Tools and BMA Media Group. Find out more information online at labortools.com.